All right, welcome back to Unqualified Analysis. The show with zero qualifications, zero credentials. Just keeps on doing whatever. I keep doing this every week, man. How about that? I mean, congratulations to me for my persistence, I suppose. Maybe one day it'll pay off. Anyways, today we're just getting a good old escape from the living purgatory that is existence. Talking about some sports here, ladies and gentlemen. I mean, we got a couple of headlines here. Again, it's all training camp. Football, it is. It has not quite become football season, but football is all consuming. Nothing else matters. Nothing else is going on except preseason football, as far as I'm concerned. Yeah, there's a guy named Wander Franco that may or may not have been dating a 14-year-old. That's all allegations at this point. Very, very serious allegations, though. We're going to talk about it on this episode, though. We're talking about football. Football is all-consuming. Football is all-knowing. Football is omniscient. Football is what makes me feel good inside these days, anyways. So we're talking about that. We're not talking about the possible pedophile, alleged pedophile over there in baseball. Not doing it. Not going to talk about the possibility of the Rays harboring a pedophile on their team unknowingly. We're just going to keep talking about just things, stuff that is pertaining to football, namely professional football. We could talk about things that are going on in college football, but you know what? I'm making the executive decision that I'm not nearly as dialed in and focused on the college game as I am the pros. So we're just gonna save that, bottle that up until next week, week after, whenever the hell the first week of college football is. And today we're gonna get you the second to last division preview. This one being for the AFC North. It's gonna be good. The kitchen is hot in the AFC North. Let me tell you that right now. It's the same every single year, and I assume it'll be even better than it was last year. But before we get to that, let us hop into a couple quick headlines here. And first and foremost, this one I actually lied. I am going to talk a little bit about college football, but it's mostly about Ole Miss and showing that they're a bunch of scumbags. Because if you didn't hear that beloved movie from back when I was in high school or whatever, The Blind Side, pertaining to Michael Orr. You may know Michael Orr, a former Baltimore Raven. Before that, first round pick of the Baltimore Ravens because of how he played at Ole Miss. Nothing against Michael Orr, obviously. Michael Orr is the one coming out here telling the truth in the whole matter, and the truth is the story of that movie, The Blind Side, of which Michael Orr was the subject. A lot of it was false. A lot of it was false. The Tuohys, or whatever their names are, the scumbags who were Ole Miss donors, never adopted Michael Orr. They just tricked him into signing some papers once he turned 18 that they were conservators, which is notably not adoptive parents. Also notably, the Ole Miss donors funneled a great offensive line prospect into the Ole Miss program. Big old shocker there. What can I say? This is just what you get with Ole Miss folks. And if anyone wants to dissuade me from that, you can't. But I invite you to try and follow me on all my socials at Caleb Verzak. There you go. There's my plug for the day. Ole Miss. Ole Miss football in general. I mean, look at that. Come on. What more can we expect from Ole Miss? Outside of that, let's talk about some pro football, shall we? Had a couple deals come across the table just happening today on Monday when I am recording. First and foremost, Ezekiel Elliott, former Cowboys running back, longtime Cowboys running back, just reached a deal with the New England Patriots on a one-year contract. I believe it is $6 million on 1 year. He will be sharing the backfield with Ramondre Stevenson this season. I'm not entirely sure what the role will be. I mean, Ramondre Stevenson is kind of a three-down sort of player. Maybe you see like a third down package for Zeke Elliott. I think they bring kind of similar things to the table. I mean, if you don't know, Ramondre Stevenson is like 6'1", damn near 260 pounds, and can move as well. Absolute freak specimen of a running back there. So he can kind of carry the load when you need him to. But having a guy like Ezekiel Elliott around who just has that straight line power at this point in his career, very good in the blocking situations when it comes to pass protecting. That's been kind of One of the things that was his hallmarks coming out of college, one of the reasons he was a number 3 overall pick, which thinking back, a running back at number 3 overall, just wild considering where running backs are at in today's. And think about it, he got a 6-year, $90 million contract from the Cowboys too. And yes, of course, a good amount of that was funny money. I mean, he just got cut on the tail end of that deal, come to think of it. But he got $90 million on a contract at one point. $15 million a year, which is more than most running backs are still making right now. Wild stuff. But he is now with the New England Patriots. That blocking has been a hallmark throughout his entire career as far as pass protecting goes. I think he'll be very pivotal in that role. I'm not sure what Ramondre Stevenson's bona fides are in that department. He can run real well, though, Ramondre Stevenson, so there's room for both of these guys in the backfield. And with Damian Harris out of town, you need another guy to step in anyways that could fill some of that dirty work role that Harris kind of left for no one in particular this offseason. So having Ezekiel Elliott in there, I'm not sure how much he's got left in the tank. He looked kind of cooked at times whenever he was running last year for the Cowboys, but not a bad guy to have there in the rotation if you're looking for a short yardage option, good pass blocker in the backfield. Zeke Elliott now with the Patriots. Also signed a deal today on a contract. Other running back that was kind of wondering where will he go, will he, won't he? We're talking about Dalvin Cook, the former Vikings running back, not signing back with the Vikings, not signing with the Miami Dolphins. Yup, it's the one that we thought it was going to be the entire time. It is the New York Jets, and that just came across my timeline, so I'm not entirely privy to the numbers on that deal. I'm assuming it is a 1-year deal, though. I'm assuming he's going to step in, probably shoulder the load initially in the season. Yes. Vikings had an offset on the $2 million they owed Cook, which this deal presumably will relieve. Thank you, Kevin Seifert. Appreciate that. Man's very diligent about his job reporting on the Vikings. Sometimes it is information that I simply do not give half a dry shit about, though. So that was one of them. I just read it on the podcast. I just wasted y'all's time with that basically useless information. $2 million, basically less than 1% of the cap we're talking about. Let's focus on something else there, Kevin. Let's focus on something else as far as the numbers are concerned. But I digress on that front. He is now with the Jets as Dalvin Cook, probably going to shoulder a good amount of the load with Breece Hall working his way back in there from an ACL injury. I think this is a really good pickup, especially in an offense where I think they're going to want to run a little bit more, if for no other reason than to kind of cover up the deficiencies on the outside. Not at receiver. They are loaded at receiver. I'm talking about at offensive tackle, where Mekhi Becton still isn't totally healthy from shoulder injury, knee injury that he suffered last year. Also in the offseason as well. Dwayne Brown, 39 years old, 38, 39 years old. On the other side, the presumed starter at right tackle. They've been working Elijah Vera Tucker, their Pro Bowl, All-Pro stud guard that they drafted a couple years back. They've been working him out at tackle, seeing if maybe he'll play at either right or left tackle. The tackle situation is an absolute mess, but the interior of the offensive line is as strong as it has ever been. And when that is the case, you don't want to be dropping back and passing 40, 45 times a game if you are Aaron Rodgers, because Aaron Rodgers will be flattened, pancaked into the turf if that is the case. With that in mind, signing Dalvin Cook, already having Breece Hall, you got Michael Carter there as a third back. You got a really solid committee to turn to if you want to just turn it loose, make it as balanced as possible, take some pressure off those tackles so they can keep the defensive ends guessing. Those defensive ends can't just pin their ears back and just go straight back for Aaron Rodgers. You kind of keep them on their toes a little bit more, make the job a little bit easier for those tackles on the outside by just pounding the rock, being physical down the middle. Maybe make them load the box a little bit if you can have some success in that area as well. This is a good signing for the New York Jets. Interested to see what the numbers are. I hope my boy Dalvin got all the money he deserves. I wish he was with the Minnesota Vikings, but that just simply wasn't going to happen. The Jets do finally get it done, and it's at a point in training camp where seems like the worst of it is over for a lot of these guys. A lot of the most physical practices are out of the way. Sure, it is still training camp, still some things to get done, but But really, we're going to the second preseason game of a three preseason game preseason. I guess we're going into the third one for the Jets or something along those lines, but I digress on that front. Either way, we're like basically just at the preseason game where all the starters are going to play for 2.5 quarters or something like that, and then the final preseason game, they're basically all going to do jack shit on the sidelines like they should in the preseason. It's a good time to sign, just kind of like learn the offense a little bit. As a running back, I feel like it's a bit more of a limited slate of plays that you absolutely need to learn at this juncture in the game, but it's a good time to sign just to make sure you're ready for the opening kick of the season here in a couple weeks' time. Oh, I can't wait. I just can't wait right now. It's the greatest time of the year, football season, man. I'm giddy with excitement. Just goosebumps all over myself at this moment. That's a lie, absolute lie. It's very warm in here, actually. I mean, I'm not warm. It's temperate. I'll put it to you that way. But either way, good signing for the New York Jets. I'm liking what they're doing with the team right now. Also today, who signed as well? Ah, yes, Zach Martin was holding out with the Cowboys, making about $14 million each year over the next 2 years. He signs a bigger deal. Scrap those last 2 years. He's making $18 million each year, and I believe it is all guaranteed over this season and next season for one of the best guards in the game. $18 million a year, and that's $4 million a year pay bump for Zach Martin. He will be back with them, and just like he never even left. I mean, love to see it. Love to see the guys getting paid, and Jerry Jones has found a way to get a lot of these deals done in the past, continues to do so right now. So he will be back with the, what's the word? What am I even looking at? It doesn't matter. I'm getting confused and sort of distracted all at once here, but Zach Martin will be back with the Cowboys. Chris Jones, on the other hand, still no progress on that deal to re-sign with the Chiefs. The Chiefs have reportedly not wanted to make Jones the highest paid defensive tackle in the league, so we are at an impasse here. That Aaron Donald contract will probably be staying intact. We're just going to have to wait and see what Chris Jones does here as far as will he show up, how long is he going to take those fines, $50,000 a day for missing training camp. That being said, I doubt he's paid even a cent of that. Seems like something you can kind of just put off for the longest time until they eventually get some sort of deal done when he's racked up like 500 to $1 million sort of in fines. Then you sign that big old signing bonus, and then a lot of that goes towards those fines. I don't know how that whole thing is going to work, but there does not seem to have been a lot of progress with Chris Jones, and the Chiefs are kind of steadfast in not wanting to pay him more than Aaron Donald. So this thing could go on. I still don't think it'll stretch into the regular season. I think they're going to get this thing done somehow, some way. Or I almost keep calling him Aaron Jones. It's Chris Jones. My God, I went to school with him for a year, I want to say. So I got no excuse to mess his name up. I don't know what I was really thinking there. My brain is going all sorts of places because I'm just slowly imploding inside. It's just one of those days. One of those days, man. Mondays, and am I right? Think about squeeze as much juice as I can out of that one, though. So who's to say what happens with Chris Jones? Zach Martin does get the deal done, so that leaves only a couple players. I mean, just very quietly over there in Las Vegas, Josh Jacobs still holding out as well, except for he can't incur fines because he's on the franchise tag and has not signed, so he can just sit at home if he wants. That one does not appear even close to resolution. I would not be shocked at all if Josh Jacobs did what Saquon Barkley did not have the stomach to do and just sit out for actual regular season games when it's all said and done. I would not be shocked at all because it does not feel like not a whole lot of love lost between the Raiders and Josh Jacobs. Basically, ever since Dave Ziegler and Josh McDaniels came into town, it feels like they've just been trying to push Josh Jacobs right out the door pretty much with how they've been negotiating with him. So That one doesn't feel close to resolution. Chris Jones feels closer, but still not very close to a resolution. And that's kind of just where we're at right now. Outside of that, what else we got today? Quick drink from the old can of mystery caffeine. Oh, yeah, that's good. That's good sauce right there. That's good sauce. Ooh, excuse me. That's disgusting. I hope you all heard that at home. Either way, we got two more headlines, it looks like. The Saints were expected to sign both Kareem Hunt and Anthony Barr. That looked like it was a done deal. Diana Rossini put that across the timeline at some point saying, hey, they're going to try and sign both these guys pending a physical. Pending physical evaluation. That was the big language there that I think undid at least one of these. And my guess is linebacker Anthony Barr did not take a visit after this. Basically, just left the Saints facility without a deal. I'm guessing something came up in the physical that the Saints definitely did not want to invest in. Sucks for the old Viking. Hate to see it, but he did not get a deal here. Kareem Hunt, a little bit of a different situation. Reportedly, the Colts called him up, said, hey, leave the Saints facility right now. We're gonna give you more money than what the Saints are gonna give you right now. So you just pack your bags, fly to Indianapolis, and we're gonna see what this thing's going. Oh yeah, by the way, that's another thing that happened. Jonathan Taylor was out of practice for a while, away from the team. He's going to be coming back into practice. I believe either today or tomorrow. He'll be reporting back to training camp, according to Coach Shane Steichen. But that's besides the point. With all that in the air, with Jonathan Taylor being out of the facility, rehabbing away from the team, weird stuff going on there. We all know what happened with, Jim Irsay just saying whatever happens to come to Jim Irsay's mind about the this time the running back position and how they should be paid, or more accurately, not paid, particularly. That's all been very acrimonious. Wasn't sure what was going on there, so you bring in Kareem Hunt for a free agent visit. Kick the tires on that one a little bit. And for whatever reason, he left Indianapolis without a deal too. Whether that be the physical related, whether he just thinks he can get more money somewhere else. Maybe he's just kind of weighing his options and deciding who to sign with here in the coming days, weeks, whatever, what have you. No idea what happened there, but he still does not have a job yet. And after the Saints being reported to being looking to sign both Kareem Hunt and Anthony Barr, turns out they signed neither. So that's just that's where we're at right now. That's the season we're in. Talking about contracts for guys like Kareem Hunt and Anthony Barr. I mean, at least Kareem Hunt is still a serviceable running back at this stage in his career, but there you have it right there. That's basically all of it for the personnel stuff. Wild media news, though. Penn Entertainment, well, kind of media news. More just like sports gambling news, but let me talk about it. Penn Entertainment parted ways with Barstool, agreed to form a new betting platform with ESPN. It's going to be called ESPN Bet, I believe it is. And now Dave Portnoy once again owns 100% of Barstool for the first time in like a decade. Bought it back for the low price of $1. $1 it took to buy back Barstool Sports. You may remember back, if you follow these sorts of things, if you're big into the business of the sports media and all that sort of stuff, you may remember, I think it was like a year and a half, 2 years ago. It's hard to say at this point. Time is a flat circle, and days just keep going faster and faster. Even when you're not having a good time. It's crazy how that works when you're getting older. The days just go faster no matter what, pretty much. But I digress on that point. The thing was with Barstool, whenever it first sold to Penn Entertainment, they sold it for like hundreds of millions of dollars. Like I think 500 to $700 million is what it sold the remaining stake of to Penn Entertainment. And I believe that all went to Dave Portnoy. At the end of this thing, they divested from Barstool Sports for a singular dollar. I mean, that's got to be the greatest finesse move of all time by Dave Portnoy, the CEO of Barstool, right? I mean, you go from getting paid over $500 million because he was the owner of Barstool before Penn Entertainment, or that stake in Barstool before Penn Entertainment bought the last bit of it. But you go from making hundreds of $1 millions on that deal to only paying $1 to get all of it back, every last bit of Barstool back. That's the steal of the century right there, and it just goes to show you he must have had the best business relationship of all time with Penn Entertainment. How in the world in 2023, in the era of cold, calculated business moves, do you pull off this heist? I don't know what the hell. I don't know what happened to where Penn Entertainment just decided, hey, you can basically have Barstool back for free. We don't want any of your money. I mean, it's crazy. But Dave Portnoy must be the most charismatic man of all time, build the greatest business relationships of all time. If this is how it was, either that or Penn Entertainment just thinks Barstool Sports is just a worthless pile of shit, which I don't think at all. That doesn't seem to kind of line up with what I'm thinking. But then again, they have the financials, so I have no idea. We're selling it for $1 though. Seems like a big time goodwill move. Which, hey, good for Portnoy. Good for Barstool Sports, I suppose. They got old Ben Mintz back after he decided to say a naughty word on a stream. Good stuff all around there. If you follow Barstool, you know what I'm talking about. If not, you're wanting me to shut up and move on to actual sports. So yeah, that's what I'm gonna do. But wild week of stuff as far as the business is concerned, and kind of excited to see what what happens now that old Dave Portnoy owns the entirety of Barstool Sports again. That seems like it's going to be a fun time to watch going forward. Outside of that, though, I'm talking about media deals and whatnot, talking about business sides of sports. So I think we've completely wrung the juice out of the headline segment. Wrung more juice than was probably in it, quite frankly. I mean, we're 23 minutes into this thing. Got to bang out this division preview for you, but should be nice and easy. I just wrote down exactly 0 notes for it, so we're just going to go straight off the top of the dome, just like basically everything else in this episode thus far, but enough talking in circles. Let's get into the AFC North preview, shall we? Let's go. And all right, you know the drill. We go down the division standings from last year, from best to worst of the last season, and we just tell it like it is, if you will. Just tell them what's going on with each of these teams, the personnel moves, what they did this offseason, and how I see them faring this coming year. First and foremost, we have got the Cincinnati Bengals. I almost said like New Jersey Bengals. I mean, what's going on here? What's going on here? I got no idea. My mind is an absolute pretzel right now. I digress though. The Cincinnati Bengals, owned by Mike Brown, quarterbacked by Joe Burrow. We all know what it is. We've got they were pretty close to winning a Super Bowl. Well, not winning. Pretty close to going to a Super Bowl last year, going to the AFC title game, playing a classic there with the Chiefs over on the AFC side of that bracket. Couldn't quite get there, though. Was not in the cards for them last year, so once again, they fall just short of the ultimate goal. I had a bit of a scare in the... Jeez, this caffeinated beverage is just kicking me right in the taint right now. I'll tell you what. Had a bit of a scare earlier in this training camp with Joe Burrow going down with a calf strain. He probably won't play at all in the preseason. What else did they do? I mean, they've lost basically everyone in the secondary, but we'll talk about that in just a second. Still got Lou Anarumo. Had a bunch of head coaching interviews, but no one decided to pull the trigger on him at this stage in his career. So they've still got Lou Anarumo there on the defensive side. Still got almost said Zach Martin. He's the guard that just signed a big deal with the Cowboys. Zach Taylor is the head coach of the Cincinnati Bengals. Good for me. I'm smart. I know things. Yeah, still got both of those sides of the ball squared away. I think they still got basically all the offensive personnel as far as coaches are concerned there. So everything's pretty much intact on both sides of the ball. Just got a few personnel things to work out, but with Joe Burrow in that lineup, I don't see him falling. I don't see him falling off too far. I'll just put it that way, but. What else is there to say? I mean, there's not much else going on over there in Bengal land. They re-signed some players this year. They lost some players this year. But since we're talking about players, let's get to the personnel moves of this offseason for the Cincinnati Bengals, starting off with the NFL draft. In the first round, they get Miles Murphy out of Clemson, kind of a raw prospect, defensive lineman, defensive end particularly. Interested to see that what he does this year. Probably will, they got Sam Hubbard and Trey Hendrickson back there already, so Murphy will probably just kind of be sneaking into the rotation there at outside pass rush, see what he does throughout the course of this year, see how he progresses as far as his physical attributes. I don't know about physical attributes. Skills, that's what I'm talking about. Skills, coaching, all that sorts of stuff. Interested to see what he does. Second round, they got cornerback DJ Turner out of Michigan. I think he was a pretty well respected guy in this draft. A guy they probably needed there in the secondary with all that they lost this offseason. But again, we'll talk about that in just a second. Got to clear my throat real quick. They get safety Jordan Battle from Alabama after the other safety Alabama, Brian Branch, gets drafted by the Detroit Lions in the previous round. Good pair of safety there for the Tide last year, second and third round picks respectively. But they get Jordan Battle out of Alabama, a position of need, as we all know from the course of the free agency going-ons with the Cincinnati Bengals. In the fourth round, they get Charlie Jones, wide receiver out of Purdue. Fifth round, they get running back Chase Brown out of Illinois, who was much faster and much more explosive at the combine than I could have honestly imagined based on his playing style. Big physical back, but really good straight line runner, really strong, really explosive in general. Also, that's one thing I forgot to mention. Joe Mixon, wild stuff being alleged in a civil suit pertaining to possibly shooting in the direction of children, allegedly. Also facing a charge for aggravated menacing, something along those lines. Kind of, domestic violence adjacent sort of things that, popping back up from his college career. We talked about it earlier in this offseason. Still an ongoing legal matter, so not making a move on him yet are the Bengals. Same thing with Jack Jones and the Patriots. He's still on the Patriots, probably will be until that whole case gets adjudicated officially. Outside of that, though, having Chase Brown in the building seems like one of those things, like a good backup plan to have. Fifth round running back could very easily step in there and start if need be. I like that pick for him in the fifth round. Then after that, I mean, no one knows. I mean, they drafted in the sixth round, they drafted a punter, Brad Robbins, out of Michigan. Never heard of him in my entire life, and he was on a good team. That's how much I follow punters, both in the league and outside. Well, at least in the league, I know their names for the most part, except for the rookies and whatnot. But they draft a punter there. If you draft a punter, draft a kicker in general, you're gonna basically guarantee lock him in on the team. No matter if you take him the very last pick of the draft or any time before that, if you're drafting a specialist, good chance they're going to make the team basically no matter what, so long as they don't look absolutely lost out there on the football field. So he'll be stepping in for him this year, I would imagine. That basically does it for the draft. I mean, no one else there you're going to really know or remember at this point, so we'll just keep it moving from there. As far as the free agency went, they did bring in Orlando Brown from the Kansas City Chiefs. He'll be playing left tackle for him. Jonah Williams is going to slide over to right tackle. Lyle Collins having some health issues right now, it seems like. So if he does come back, I would not be surprised if Collins slides in there to guard and kind of bolsters the interior as well. But they do bring in Orlando Brown. That can only help, I would imagine, at this point. Jesse Bates, their big-time safety from last year, they lose him to the Atlanta Falcons. They lose their other safety, Von Bell, to the Carolina Panthers. Both of them going to the NFC South when it's all said and done. Right there, you lose both of your starting safeties right out of the gates in free agency, and that's kind of what they're up against this season. We'll talk about that more when we get to the depth chart of it all. Hayden Hurst, they lose to the Carolina Panthers. Not kind of one that sneaks under the radar a little bit, but he's a big-time pass catcher. Really, really good option for Joe Burrow to look for as a tight end, and I'm not sure they really got anything to replace that. What they did get to replace, they got Irv Smith, so he'll be great for 3 snaps before he breaks an ankle or something like that, whatever Irv Smith happens to do. Hope he stays healthy. Former Vikings tight end, former second-round pick for the Vikings. When he was on the field initially, man, he looked explosive, but my God, the guy cannot keep himself healthy. It's just an endemic problem. Hopefully it gets better at this point, but that's who they replaced Hayden Hurst with. They did re-sign Jermaine Pratt on a 3-year deal. They bring in Nick Scott, starting safety for the Los Angeles Rams. Lose Samaje Perine to the Denver Broncos. Backup running back to Joe Mixon last year. Just talked about Irv Smith. Lose cornerback Eli Apple to the Miami Dolphins. Often clowned on as Eli Apple, but not a bad corner. A guy that you certainly don't want to lose out of your secondary. That was a big loss for him. It might not get talked about a whole lot, but big loss as far as depth is concerned on the back end for that Cincinnati defense. They bring in the QB god, Trevor Siemian, from the Chicago Bears. He's, absolute specimen. We all know when you're looking for a win, you need a bucket late in the game. Trevor Siemian, he's your dude. Everyone knows that. Everyone knows the legend of the Seaman Man. Outside of that, you got guard Max Sharping re-signing. Trey Flowers, another cornerback they lose to the Atlanta Falcons. Brandon Allen, backup quarterback they lose to San Francisco. Who cares? They keep Drew Sample, the tight end, as the, I believe, or second or third tight end there for him. Re-sign Trent Taylor. Re-sign running back Travion Williams, Michael Thomas, not the one in New Orleans, the wide receiver, the free safety they re-sign on a 1-year deal. Get Sidney Jones from the Las Vegas Raiders, corner, not necessarily the place that is known for breeding corner talent, if you will, but I digress. And they bring in Cody Ford from the Arizona Cardinals, guard there on the interior. He will provide some depth for them. And with that, that's all the personnel moves for this offseason. So let's look at what they're working with in the depth chart with all of that coming together. Right now, Joe Burrow is your number one quarterback. Duh. Jake Browning, actually the second quarterback, which sucks for Trevor Siemian, I suppose. He'll probably be on the team, but well, maybe that's even better because then you just collect the paycheck and you literally will never get on the field. You just got to kind of study, do some grunt work, and just be a good morale guy. So, you know, come to think of it, good for Trevor Siemian. Good for Trevor Siemian. He's living the life back there with the Cincinnati Bengals. Running back, still got Joe Mixon there as the number one back. Chris Evans, Captain America himself, coming in as the second back. Then Chase Brown, the draft pick we just talked about, is your third running back right now for the Cincinnati Bengals. At wide receiver, you know the names. They've been there the last 3 seasons at this point. Jamar Chase, T. Higgins, Tyler Boyd, maybe the best 1, 2, 3 in all of football when it comes to wide receivers at this point. Then you got the White Lightning, Trenton Irwin as the fourth receiver, Charlie Jones, Trent Taylor as your fifth and sixth, as if anyone really cares. And of course you got Irv Smith Jr. as the star tight end there for him. All jokes aside, pretty solid group of weapons. That's really not changed in the entirety of Joe Burrow being there. Outside of like the first year where he tore his ACL, they draft Jamar Chase the very next year and they're off to the races, I tell you. So that's been consistent. The drama comes this offseason when they have to find a way to keep all of them in town. Feels like Tyler Boyd's probably not going to be there anymore, at the very, very least. Questions about T. Higgins. If you're going to keep one of either T. Higgins or Jamar Chase, sorry, T, it's Jamar. Jamar Chase is an absolute stud there, so you're going to keep him basically no matter what. That's this offseason, though. For 2023, they're still looking mean and lean right now. They're looking good there on the outside. As far as the offensive line goes, just talked about left tackle Orlando Brown coming in there for free agency. He will slide in at left tackle and on day one. Left guard, they got Cordell Volson. Center, Ted Karras returning from last year. Right guard, they got Alex Kappa returning from last year. And at right tackle, Jonah Williams was playing left tackle for him last year. He will slide over to right tackle instead of being traded, which I think he did request a trade at some point, and the Bengals just said, no, we're not going to do that. And that kind of just dissipated into nothingness, essentially. And you got Lyle Collins just lurking there in the background, currently slated as the backup to Jonah Williams, but if and when he gets healthy. I would imagine he probably steps in for either Alex Kappa or Cordell Volson into the starting lineup as at one of those guard spots, just because Lyle Collins at guard, maybe it's not the most natural position for him, but Lyle Collins at guard is probably an upgrade to either Kappa or Volson at this point. Either way, they got a pretty solid offensive line. I mean, it's not the greatest offensive line in the world. Don't get me wrong. It's no Detroit Lions offensive line, who we're going to talk about next week. But it is a really solid group. It's a group that should be able to do some damage. And overall, I don't see the offense being a whole lot different than it has been the last couple of years under Joe Burrow and these weapons. I think they're going to be right there, pressing up against the top 10, really looking to make some waves this season as they always have. And if the offense has anything to say about it, they'll be right there at the end of the season once again. The problem is, on the other side of the ball, few questions over there on the defense. Obviously, the front four rather, remains the same. Sam Hubbard at left defensive end, DJ Reader at the defensive tackle, BJ Hill at the other defensive tackle, Trey Hendrickson at the right defensive end, with Joe Osai and Miles Murphy kind of coming off the edge in a backup capacity. Good front four there. No comments or questions other than solid group. Solid group. And as far as the linebackers go, I believe they bring back pretty much the same group as last year as well. Logan Wilson, Jermaine Pratt, Akeem Davis, Gaither, all coming back. Solid front seven. I got no worries whatsoever about the front seven because it's the same group of guys. They've still got the same defensive coordinator, Coach Lou Anarumo, over there. I feel very good about what the front seven is bringing. I am a little bit worried about what's on the back end. You still got Cheeto Uzie, solid number one corner over there. No worries about that. Nick Scott you bring in at strong safety this offseason. Got a good couple interceptions with the Rams last year, not too bad. The question marks come with Dax Hill at the free safety, who they drafted late in the first round last year, and at right cornerback Cam Taylor-Britt. Bunch of question marks there. The depth at cornerback is DJ Turner II, Mike Hilton, Jalen Davis, Sidney Jones. Not the greatest group of all time. It a little bit of questions when it comes to the second corner and the free safety. Dax Hill has to play like a first-round pick if they want to be any good this year, I think. Cam Taylor-Britt's going to have to step up big time, if they want to kind of compete on the back end. And the thing is, though, with Coach Lou Anarumo, I do feel like they're going to put something together and just kind of get across the finish line. They may not be the greatest defense in the world. They might get gashed and burned at different points in the season, but when you need them to harden up, I think that they have what it takes to do it. I think they got a solid number one corner, like I said. Nick Scott, not a bad safety as well. Dax Hill just has to be serviceable. Same with Cam Taylor-Britt. And I think Lou Anarumo is going to be able to kind of coach around it. Lean on that front seven a little bit, maybe blitz a little bit more, try and cause some confusion, make it a little bit easier for him on the back end as far as timing is concerned, create some pass rush just to make sure the clock speeds up a little bit for the quarterback. And like I said, I don't think they're going to be in the upper echelon of defenses this year. There's just too many good ones ahead of them. But I think, top half of the league, pushing top 10 maybe when it's all said and done if they maximize what they've got in there. I just don't think this is a bad unit at all. And of course, still got, actually, I don't know why they drafted Brad Robbins. They got Drew Chrisman there. He was there last year, still there apparently now. Feels like a bit of a foregone conclusion, isn't it, that Brad Robbins is going to take that job and Drew Chrisman's going to kind of go by the wayside a little bit over there. But I digress. It's all happening right now, I tell you. That's the defense. That's the specialist. Let's talk about my feel on the prospects for this team overall. And I'd say worst case scenario, if you're talking about the defense doesn't play up to snuff, maybe Lyle Collins doesn't get healthy and you got a little bit of a problem on the interior of the offensive line or something like that. Joe Mixon things escalate there and you got to kind of get him away from the team. I still think that the floor on this team is like 9 or 10 wins. I don't think, even in the very worst of worst case scenarios, barring injury, talk about injury to Joe Burrow, that would derail the whole season, but take out anyone's starting quarterback pretty much, and the whole season is pretty much over. So we can kind of just set that to the side. An obvious caveat there when it comes to how the season should progress. Outside of that, though, if Joe Burrow stays healthy, there's only so bad they could be. And I mean, if the defense is just simply not that good and they got to get into some scoring matches with teams, yeah, they'll lose a few. But even if they do, and even if it's a flawed football team, they should be right in the thick of things, competing for a playoff spot when it's all said and done, even in the worst cases of scenario. And I'd say best case, it's tough to see them getting too good of a record this season based on the division that they've got. But even with that said, I'm thinking 12 or 13 not out of the question here. I think they could very easily do that and end up competing for a number one seed, even if things kind of go haywire there with the Chiefs and the Bills as well. I just feel like this team, the ceiling is still as high as it's ever been. They still got Joe Burrow at quarterback. They still got a solid front seven. Built the pass rush when it comes to the playoffs, man. So I just feel like the ceiling is still very, very high. The Super Bowl window is very much open for this Bengals team. My prediction, 11-6. 11-6 is probably the sweet spot there. I don't think they're going to quite get 12 or 13 wins. I don't think they're going to be as bad as a 9 or 10 win team either. 11-6 feels like the number for them. It's a tough division. Maybe they're even a little bit better than 11-6 would suggest just based on that division, but just having the Steelers, having the Ravens, having the Browns all in the division, all having good enough rosters to make the playoffs when you look at them on paper, it's going to be tough. You're going to lose a good amount of games in the division. If they go 4-2, that would be a fantastic season. They just go 500 in the division. That's not bad at all. I think that's really what you kind of expect this year. And basically every year in the AFC North is just such a high quality group of teams. And dropping 3 games in the division, probably going to drop 3 more elsewhere just because the NFL is hard and they've been good for successive years and the strength of schedule kind of scales accordingly in that way. 11-6 feels like the number. They still feel like maybe the team to beat in the division, but maybe not. Let's talk about the Ravens, shall we? The maybe not surprise contender, but the ascendant team looking to make a push at that division title this year. The Ravens come in, they sign Lamar Jackson to a big deal. They pony up to get Todd Monken out of Georgia, upgrade the offensive scheme a little bit from what Greg Roman was doing, just kind of a glorified option with very simple passing concepts that was admittedly easy to defend for opposing teams, at least reportedly according to the players in the offense that these defenses were defending. Not the greatest group of passing concepts, but even with it, you saw Lamar Jackson have some fantastic games in that offense as well. Now you're bringing in a more sophisticated offensive system, a guy with Todd Monken who has shown an ability with the Georgia Bulldogs to run the football if need be, loves to pass the ball down the field, which Lamar Jackson has wanted to do. You invest the money in him. You bring in weapons on the outside, which we're going to talk about here in just a second. You got a very strong defense on the other side. Re-signing Lamar Jackson to that big time deal to keep him in the building for the foreseeable future. This Ravens team only got better this offseason. I don't know if they got younger, but they certainly had some young players on the defensive side of the ball that are going to get better this year. They've got a perpetually great defense on that side of the ball. Maybe the best duo of interior linebackers in the entire league outside of Fred Warner and Dre Greenlaw over there with the San Francisco 49ers in Patrick Queen and Roquan Smith in the middle there for the Baltimore Ravens. Everything is in place for them if Lamar Jackson comes out and plays up to his abilities to that MVP level that he showed at one point. If he does that again, this is a Super Bowl or bust type of roster. It is absolutely loaded at all levels. Maybe a few concerns here and there, but this feels like a year where the Ravens are gearing up again to make a Super Bowl run. Let's look at the personnel moves they made this offseason. Starting with the draft, they get Zay Flowers, wide receiver out of Boston College, in the first round. Speedy guy, kind of plays bigger than his size sort of guy, also can burn you downfield as well. A guy that I would assume Todd Monken and Lamar Jackson are going to be licking their lips trying to get the ball to down the field at different points. Also maybe a bit more of a gadget guy. Throw him in motion and precepts. So sometimes you hand it off to him. Maybe you throw a swing pass to him every once in a while. Zay Flowers should be a fun little wrinkle to this offense going in this year. Just another weapon to add to the arsenal that they accrued throughout the course of this offseason. Third round, they get Trenton Simpson, inside linebacker out of Clemson. He'll probably be more of a depth role at this point with how strong the inside linebackers are for him. Tavius Robinson, outside linebacker out of Ole Miss. They drafted in the 4th round. Outside of that, yes, the killer himself, Andrew Voorhees, offensive guard out of USC, they get in the 7th round. Why am I talking about a 7th round pick? Well, you may remember him tearing his ACL at the NFL Combine. Then after tearing his ACL, crutches his ass over to the bench press, one-legged, bracing on the ground, destroys the entire offensive line class in bench press, absolutely mops the floor with him, an absolute dog in the weight room. Just tore his ACL. Probably would have been a mid-round pick if he hadn't torn his ACL, but a good little investment for next year for the Ravens to maybe bolster that interior offensive line a little bit. We won't know until we get there, though. He did tear his ACL at the Combine, so don't expect him to play at all this season. This is just going to be a redshirt year for him. Maybe you work on some technique, work on some strength training to the side a little bit, but looking forward to seeing what he does maybe next year. Maybe you can insert him into the starting lineup with that redshirt year under his belt. With that, let's look at the free agency moves that they had. First and foremost, a couple of losses. Ben Powers, guard, big-time guard that they brought up through the system there. He leaves in free agency on a big-time deal with the Denver Broncos, bolstering that interior offensive line. Kind of a big loss for him, but you still got Tyler Linderbaum there. Lamar Jackson kind of makes things easy for guards in this system, just because a lot of running plays with Lamar Jackson, man. I'll tell you what, maybe it's a little bit different in Todd Monken's offense. We'll have to see what that replacement looks like over there. But Ben Powers, big guy to lose in that offensive line, can't be understated there in the middle. They lose tight end Josh Oliver, big time road grading blocking tight end. They lose him to my boys, the Minnesota Vikings, and he has been, for what we paid him for, we got TJ Hawkinson, man. We don't need you to catch passes, boy. Go out there and make defensive ends' lives hell, and that is exactly what he has done thus far in camp. They're going to miss him there in Baltimore. Going to be a hard guy to replace. Isaiah Likely is a very good pass-catching tight end. So is Mark Andrews. Neither of them are the blocker that Josh Oliver is, though, so that's going to be a tough one to replace for him. But they added some players, too. I'll tell you what, man. Odell Beckham Jr. coming over, was in free agency all of last year, healing with that ACL that he suffered in the Super Bowl. He's back. He's been making some big-time plays in camp. They re-signed Justice Hill. They bring in Rocky Ya-Sin from the Las Vegas Raiders. Did lose Calais Campbell. I mean, they cut Calais Campbell. He goes to the Atlanta Falcons. Justin Houston, he signed with the Carolina Panthers, I believe, over the course of this last week or the previous week. I think I talked about it on last week's episode, though. So he won't be there anymore. Nelson Aguilar comes over from the New England Patriots. That's another wide receiver added to the mix there. Nice 1-2-3 with Bateman, Beckham, Zay Flowers. Then you got Nelson Aguilar kind of sliding in there at the 4 probably. Marcus Peters goes to the Las Vegas Raiders last week. Talked about that. Then we get into a bunch of players that I don't really know. Geno Stone, he resigned as a safety. I don't know. Tristan Colon Castillo, he signed with the New York Jets, but they have Tyler Linderbaum at center, so it doesn't really matter. Kenyon Drake signed with the Indianapolis Colts, but that's a running back that is absolutely replaceable there in the backfield, especially when you got J.K. Dobbins just sitting there. Josh Johnson on yet another team. QB signs with the Baltimore Ravens this offseason. They did lose DeMarcus Robinson, but bring in Angelo Blackson, defensive end. Delshon Phillips, what a name. He resigns with the Baltimore Ravens. Arthur Mollett, cornerback formerly of the Pittsburgh Steelers, I believe former high draft pick. He comes over to the Baltimore Ravens. Tyler Ott, long snapper, great long snapper name, Tyler Ott. He's coming over to the Baltimore Ravens from the Seattle Seahawks, and Kevin Seymour. He stays with the Baltimore Ravens. And the last minute and a half probably didn't need to happen, but there you go. You got the full picture of the Baltimore Ravens free agency this year, man. There it is right there. And with that, let's look at the depth chart, shall we? Obviously, Lamar Jackson starting quarterback, Tyler Huntley, Josh Johnson are your second and third quarterbacks. Figure it out. Doesn't really matter. Hopefully, Lamar Jackson stays healthy, so we don't have to find out about the backup quarterbacks once again this year. J.K. Dobbins, I believe he just got activated off the PUP list, so he is good to go. They're working on an extension over there, I believe, right now. Hopefully he gets that done because, running backs, someone's got to get paid. You hope someone gets paid anyways. Gus Edwards, Justice Hill there as your second and third options in the backfield. Deep backfield. I assume they're gonna rotate through a lot of guys there. Monken did it at Georgia. Probably gonna do it similarly with the Baltimore Ravens as well. Also, it's because that's what the Baltimore Ravens have done anyways over the last several years. J.K. Dobbins is obviously the number one, but you want to rotate through those backs, so you just keep hitting them and hitting them and hitting them with fresh legs coming out of that backfield. Wide receivers, you got Rashad Bateman, Odell Beckham Jr., Zay Flowers, Nelson Aguilar, Devin Duvernay. Oh, Laquan Treadwell, he's still in the league. Good for him, I suppose. But there's your 1 through 6. And as far as what Lamar Jackson has had throughout the course of his career, this probably, including Mark Andrews at tight end, Isaiah Likely as the backup tight end, probably the most loaded group of receivers that Lamar Jackson has ever been able to work with. Best offense as far as scheme goes as he's ever been able to work with in his entire career. This really feels like a year where, with all that is at their disposal at this point, they should be able to be on the cusp of a Super Bowl type of offense. There's no reason with what they have in place outside of maybe a little bit of a worry in the interior offensive line. We'll get to it in just a second. But as long as the offensive line stays at least average, there's no reason that this Ravens offense shouldn't be in the top 10 this year. They got everything in place to make it happen. They got the weapons. They got the backs. They got the quarterback there. There's no reason this should not be a top 10 offense, if not pushing top 5 this year. I love the weapons and the additions that they made throughout the course of this offseason. Really just putting it all out there and saying, hey, we believe in our quarterback and we're going to absolutely back the Brinks truck up to make sure he has everything he needs to succeed. I love to see it. Obviously, at fullback, they got Patrick Ricard. He's been working with the offensive lineman to kind of finagle with roster stuff. He's still going to be a fullback, just a 300-pound absolute physical specimen at fullback, a guy that can run, probably catch if you need him to, but that's not why he's out there. He's there to absolutely annihilate people at the point of attack. Love to see that big, scary man running downhill, especially when I'm not the one that has to get in his way. He's still there at fullback. Still got Ronnie Stanley, who hopefully he stays healthy this year at left tackle. Malasala, Amavea Lalu. Wow, we're going to call him MAL. That's the guy that's stepping in there for Ben Powers, I believe, with him departing in free agency. MAL, hopefully he plays well this season, man. I'll tell you what. Tyler Linderbaum, first-round pick from last year, still at center there. Kevin Zeitler at right guard, who I believe is a returner as well. And Morgan Moses, easy for me to say, returning at right tackle for him. That's your offense for the Baltimore Ravens. And overall, again, like I was just saying, I think this offensive line can kind of be serviceable. Got some turnover at guard, but I think the center Linderbaum is good enough to kind of cover up some of that stuff. I think the tackles, if they're healthy, are good enough to kind of cover up some of that stuff. So as long as the offensive line is average, no reason in my mind to think that this team won't be top 10, pushing top 5 on the offensive side of the ball. They're absolutely loaded there this season. On the other side of the ball, still running that 3-4 scheme. Justin Matabuike, he's going to be your left defensive end. Michael Pierce, Broderick Washington as your other lineman there. Adafe Owe, a first-round pick from a couple years ago. They're still kind of waiting to explode onto the scene, if you will, and get those double-digit sacks. He's rushing on weak side. Roquan Smith and Patrick Queen in the middle with Tyus Bowser, I believe still on the PUP list as I speak here today. But that is your front seven, strong as ever. I mean, if there's one thing that I can trust the Ravens to do year in and year out, it is to bring in a top level sort of front seven. They always do it with guys this time a mixture of guys that you've never heard of, haven't heard of before they got in the league, that just come in here and ball out, and guys that were just abject stars. I mean, particularly Roquan Smith. Patrick Queen coming in from LSU is an absolute stud. Just a really solid group there on the front seven, and I expect them to be really solid again this year, quite frankly. And then the back end, cornerback is a little bit of a question mark. Rocky Sin steps right in as the number one corner this season. Actually, no, Marlon Humphrey's on the other side. He's the number one corner. What am I talking about? Marlon Humphrey's your number one corner. Rocky Sin on the other side is your number two corner. And you got Jalen Armour Davis, Demarion Williams, as well as your depth in the cornerback room. Kyle Hamilton, Marcus Williams, though, if there's one thing that you can look at and say maybe the cornerbacks don't have to be as good, it's these safeties. Marcus Williams, when he was in there, was absolutely lights out. He balled out when he was in the lineup. Kyle Hamilton really came on strong towards the back half of the season. Absolute physical freak. I mean, he can cover tight ends. He can come down in the box. Really, the versatile prototype safety that you're seeing in the league nowadays is Kyle Hamilton. I expect him to be an absolute stud once again this year. And still got Marlon Humphrey, who's a legitimate number one cornerback there as well. So Rocky Sin, a bit of a question mark in my opinion, but even with that in mind, the safeties are good enough. The other cornerback on the other side is good enough to where I think the secondary is going to be very, very good once again this year. Again, a little bit of a question mark there at cornerback and the depth at cornerback, but man, what they have in place, it is very, very good. A lot of teams would love to have what they have. So overall, it could be a top 10 unit on defense. I don't know if they will be a top 10 unit on defense, but I mean, their offense plays a style to where they're going to limit possessions. I assume they're going to pass more, but the running game, when you have Lamar Jackson at quarterback, the run game is always going to feature prominently in whatever your plans happen to be. With the way they play offense over there, with the way that front seven is built, the way the back end is built between Hamilton, Marcus Williams, and Marlon Humphrey back there, do I think they're going to be a top 10 unit? No, I think they're probably going to be a little bit on the outside of the top 10, but they're going to be, again, a lot like the Bengals, even a little bit better than the Bengals, I would say. Top half of the league, really pushing that envelope as far as maybe being a top 10 sort of team. I'm just not sure I see it. I think they're very, very good, though. I think this is a really, really good team, really, really good defense. And with that offense on the other side, all they have to be is, hell, really, they just need to be average, but above average is what I think they're going to be this year. And that means, as far as I'm concerned, I said it before when talking about the offense, this looks like a team that is ready to make a Super Bowl run right now. And with that, let's talk about expectations, shall we? As far as the floor goes, I'm saying pretty much the same thing as the Bengals, 9 or 10 wins. This Ravens team, especially under John Harbaugh, they just never have losing seasons pretty much. And even when they do have losing seasons, it's barely because they're just so well coached. They go out there, give the other team a game basically every time they're on the field. There's not really a whole lot of blowouts against the Ravens. It's always neck and neck. Even if they do lose, they're going to be right there at the very end. Just with what's in place on offense, though, I guess maybe if the interior of that offensive line doesn't hold up, maybe they can't stretch the field quite so much, limits the offensive potential a little bit. Maybe they don't quite crack that top 10. I think the defense is good enough to kind of keep them winning games, and Lamar Jackson alone is good enough to win them a couple games here and there. When you got that quarterback back there, when you got a defense to back him up on the other side, there's only so bad you can be. So 9 or 10 wins is probably the floor, in my opinion. And as far as the ceiling, hell, they could really win. They could win 13 games this year. I very, very much could see them winning 13 games. The only thing holding them back is this division, like I said. But 13 games may end up being the ceiling for them. I just love what they have in town right now. I just think they're really, really solid on both sides of the ball. They make some really key additions on the offense to get this thing going. I love what they're working with over there. My feel on this team, 12-5. I think they're good enough to win this division. I don't know who I picked in the way too early, recklessly early predictions before, But I think they're good enough to win this division. I think they will win this division. The Bengals have enough holes on their team to where I think they're going to be just a little bit behind what the Ravens are this year, especially if Lamar Jackson stays healthy. 12-5 feels like the number for them. I don't know if they're going to go out there and I don't know if they're going to go out there and get the number one seed or anything. Probably not going to have home field advantage or a bye or anything like that. But 12-5, and they're going to be ready and pushing for a playoff, obviously a playoff berth, but a berth in the Super Bowl this year. Like I said, everything is in place. The Ravens are just right knocking on the door. I am looking forward to seeing what this team does this year because they are, everything is put together. Everything is ready for them to just go out there and ball. I would love to see it, but let's get into the second half of the division, shall we? Gonna take a little pause here. All right, and we're back. Oh, look at that! I created a new thingamabob. That's cool. That's a new track. Let's stop that act. Fuck it. We're already starting anyways, so why not? We're back. We're talking about the lower half of the division as far as the standings from last year are concerned. We're starting with the Pittsburgh Steelers. Pretty much everything is the same as far as the coaching staff. Still got Mike Tomlin there. Maybe the best coach in the league at this point, not named Bill Belichick. An absolute stud over there as far as leadership, as far as getting his players ready every single time out there. Love Mike Tomlin. Wish he would have been with the Vikings this whole time, because you may remember he was a linebacker coach with the Vikings under, can't even remember who was the head coach at that point, but probably wouldn't have had him as the head coach. Would have loved to have him there. It is what it is at this point, but still got Matt Cannon as the offensive coordinator, much to the chagrin of the Pittsburgh Steelers fans. Outside of that, I mean, they bolster the interior of the offensive line. They keep pretty much everyone around. George Pickens is back for another year. The defense is looking strong as ever. They kind of got some questions in the secondary, but they addressed them in the draft, a little bit in free agency as well. Should be a good group of guys this season. And you never really think that the Steelers are going to be just terrible at any given year. I mean, under Mike Tomlin, they've never had a losing season. Not once. They've had a couple 500 years or like one or two 500 years, but they've never had a losing season under Mike Tomlin as far as I know. So you don't expect them to ever be bad. I think you're going to be even better than they were last year, though. I think this is a really, really solid team that really only got better throughout the course of this offseason, I think. I think it kind of like cleaned house a little bit in the secondary, which was a problem last year. They still got a lot of their key players on the defensive side of the ball outside of that secondary. They've only got better on the offensive side of the ball. Another year under his belt for Kenny Pickett coming back at starting quarterback. The rookie last year really came on towards the end of the season, really shined in clutch moments for the Pittsburgh Steelers when they needed him to just go out there and get a bucket. I really liked what this Steelers team is working with right now, but let's look at the offseason moves for them this year, specifically starting with the NFL draft. In the first round, talking about bolstering that interior offensive line, they get, well, not even the interior, just offensive line in general. They draft Broderick Jones, offensive tackle out of Georgia last year. Pretty pivotal part in that front line, blocking for Kenny McIntosh and the boys out of the backfield there at Georgia for a national championship team. Was there the last 2 years, back-to-back national champions. Is Georgia, Broderick Jones specifically over there. So I think he's already slated to start over there with the Pittsburgh Steelers, reportedly playing well over there, so that's good for them on that offensive line. They draft legacy player coming in for the Pittsburgh Steelers, Joey Porter Jr., not a linebacker, a quarterback, area of need for him. Not really any interceptions in college. I think he might have one. I don't think he had any interceptions last year at Penn State. But a long, rangy guy, a guy that, has some good tools on him, big physical corner out there that they can kind of like mold into what they want him to be. In a position of need, too, you got a good guy in Patrick Peterson, who we're going to talk about as far as the free agency is concerned, in there to kind of mentor some of this young secondary. I like that pickup in the second round, Joey Porter Jr. If they can kind of like mold him into a little bit more of a finished product, Could really be an instant impact guy. He's going to step in there in a big role right away, I would imagine, with what they've got out there. Second rounder as well. They get Keanu Benton, defensive tackle out of Wisconsin. He'll provide some good depth there in the interior behind Cam Hayward. Almost said Cam Jordan. Wrong team. Cam Hayward over there in the middle with, I believe there's got to be someone else in there, right? Unless it's a 3-4. I don't know. We're going to find out. Let's just keep moving. Maybe the steal of the draft in the third round. Did not expect Darnell Washington to get to the third round. They were talking about him maybe being a late first, early second round pick at times. They get Darnell Washington, tight end out of Georgia, second tight end behind Brock Bowers last year at Georgia last year. They get him in the third round because of, I believe it was either a knee or a back issue, something medically where some teams were a little bit shied away from it. It was a deep enough tight end draft so where he could kind of slip a little bit and they wouldn't feel too bad about it. They probably got a solid guy they had less health questions about, I suppose. But Darnell Washington barely scratched the surface as a pass catcher in college. Really, if he molds it, they mold him in the with the Pittsburgh Steelers, get a little bit better route tree on him. He could really make an impact there. Where I think he's going to make the immediate impact, though, and where it's going to be his bread and butter all season that he can fall back on, is he is an absolute road grader of a blocker. I mean, they were talking. Back in college, he had coaches, the offensive line coach at Georgia, I believe, once said, if we got him to move over to tackle, I could make him the best tackle in the NFL, basically. And obviously, coaches are prone to exaggeration, but that's just how highly they thought of him as a blocker. I mean, he's every bit of 6'7", every bit of 260, 270, maybe even pushing 280. He's a massive human being. He's a very athletic human being. I mean, I think he ran like a 4.6 or something like that at the combine as well. If they can just teach him a route tree in addition to what he already does blocking, first off, I think the blocking is going to make the running game exponentially better than it was last year. I'll tell you that right now. Secondly, he's got good hands. If they can kind of like build the route tree, they can have a real star in their hands coming out of the third round in Darnell Washington at tight end there. There's been rumors, maybe whispers, that he might already be usurping Pat Freiermuth, not from credible sources, mind you, but that's a good tight end room they got there between Darnell Washington and Pat Freiermuth right now. That's really, really good, and he's apparently panning out very well so far in camp, so I can't wait to see what he does. Usually rookie tight ends don't make that big of an impact in the stat sheet their rookie year, but I think at the very least in the run game, he's going to play a pivotal role right off the bat, and it's going to be shown, maybe not in his numbers, but look at the rushing numbers this year for Najee Harris and that per carry average as far as what the Steelers are doing. I think it's going to be better just basically on the virtue of having Darnell Washington in the building blocking on some of those plays. I love that pick in the third round. They get outside linebacker from Wisconsin, Nate Herbig in the fourth round, Corey Trice out of Purdue in the seventh round, and you know what, I've said every other player, so might as well say the last one, Spencer Anderson, guard out of Maryland in the seventh round as well. That's your draft for the Pittsburgh Steelers. Let's look at what they did in free agency, shall we? First and foremost, they lose Cam Sutton, cornerback, to Detroit this offseason on a 3-year deal. That was a big loss for them. Basically, totally cleaned the cupboard as far as what they had in the secondary. Defensive end, they got Larry Ogunjobi to re-sign. Isaac Seumalo, big time free agent signing they bring in from the Philadelphia Eagles, part of that fantastic, vaunted offensive line that they had over there in Philadelphia last year. He should slot in right away and help right away in that running game and that passing game for the Pittsburgh Steelers. They bring in Cole Holcomb, linebacker from the Washington Commanders. The Commies, the Big Red Wave, kind of, let Cole Holcomb go by the side. The Pittsburgh Steelers snatched him right up on a 3-year deal. Patrick Peterson, cornerback coming over from the Minnesota Vikings. He signed a 2-year deal with the Pittsburgh Steelers. I believe only one of that is guaranteed, but they got him in the building. Very good guy to mentor your young secondary back there. Nate Herbig they bring over from the New York Jets. Guard Landon Roberts they bring in from Miami. Solid pickup there as well. They lose Robert Spillane to the Las Vegas Raiders. Big hitter over there. They'll probably miss him on short yardage situations. You may remember him famously stonewalling Derrick Henry one-on-one at the goal line. Fantastic. Big time hitter is Robert Spillane. They re-signed DeMonte Casey, the safety. Bring in Keanu Neal, strong safety from the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. Devin Bush, they lose to the Seattle Seahawks on a one-year deal. Trenton Scott, offensive guard, they lose to the Washington Commanders. Terrell Edmonds goes to the Philadelphia Eagles, former safety for them last year. Miles Jack, they lose to the Philadelphia Eagles as well. Steve Sims Sr. goes to the Houston Texans. Zach Gentry, they re-sign at tight end. And Pittsburgh made a bajillion moves. So you're going to have to bear with me here. There's a second page of free agents to get through. Marcus Golden, that should be a guy that you remember over there. Maybe not remember, but remember the name if you can. He'll be sliding in at outside linebacker for the Pittsburgh Steelers. Now he comes over from the Arizona Cardinals. I think he'll be a key player for him. And then after that, he bring in Chandon Sullivan, cornerback from Minnesota Vikings. Armon Watts, defensive tackle, comes over from the Chicago Bears. They lose Malik Reed, the outside linebacker, to the Miami Dolphins. LaRaven Clark, right tackle, comes over from the Pittsburgh Steelers. He'll be more of a depth guy. We're really just all depth guys at this point, so not really sure if there's anything else. Oh, yes, they signed the GOAT of all GOATs, the future starting quarterback for the Pittsburgh Steelers, Mason Rudolph. He's back on a one-year deal to be the backup quarterback once again for Kenny Pickett. Outside of that, who cares? That's your personnel moves, and with that, let's look at their depth chart when it's all said and done. Obviously, Kenny Pickett's going to be your number one quarterback with Mitch Trubisky being the backup quarterback behind him. Mason Rudolph, they're over in a distant third. I don't think any Steelers fan wants to see him in a game again after he got his head absolutely turtled by his own helmet, swung by Myles Garrett in a Monday Night Football game. Just fantastic television because no one got hurt. It's just good, clean football. Well, not clean, but good football right there. Running back, you got Najee Harris, Jalen Warren, and Anthony McFarland there for your 1, 2, 3. Pretty much same group they had as last year, so good continuity there. Oh yeah, another guy that I forgot they brought in, Allen Robinson. He's going to be their third receiver. They traded for him from the Los Angeles Rams. We'll just have to see what he has left in the tank because he looked about as cooked as a burnt chicken last year, man. He was not good at all whenever we saw him, but he's going to be the third receiver. It's Deontay Johnson and George Pickens as the 1-2. And honestly, I think George Pickens may end up being the 1 when it's all said and done. He has been making some absolute plays in this preseason. He was an explosive athlete last year, really made some big-time plays throughout the course of last year. I think he may be ready to ascend to that next level and take that number 1 receiver away from Deontay Johnson. But Deontay Johnson as a number 2, that's a luxury to have at number 2, man. I think that's one of the better number 2s in the entire league if that is what he ends up being. Really solid group of receivers there. And, of course, you got Pat Freiermuth, Zach Gentry, Connor Hayward. They've got Darnell Washington all the way at number 4 tight end. That's simply not going to happen. He's going to play a pretty big role there, I would imagine, for this team. If not going all the way up to the number 1 tight end, he's going to, at the very worst, he's going to be the number 2 tight end this year, I would imagine. But Freiermuth, Darnell Washington, that's a solid duo you got there at tight end there. And to go with the group of receivers, not as good as the Ravens, mind you, but this is a solid quality group of receivers they've got. And it all just kind of comes down to the offensive line, man. They got Chukwuma Okorafor at the right tackle, James Daniels at right guard, Mason Cole at center, Isaac Seumalo at left guard, Dan Moore returning at left tackle as well. Most of the same guys in there. You're just going to slide in Isaac Seumalo. And what is this offense this year, man? I simply do not know. I don't think it's going to be a top 10 offense. I think you've got the pieces to be a top half of the league sort of offense, kind of, anywhere from that 11 to 16 range, I would imagine. I don't see them finishing a whole lot higher than that. I mean, maybe if Kenny Pickett comes out here and really makes a leap in year 2 and the offensive line is just better this year, I could see it happening. I mean, maybe Broderick Jones steps in there at some point. Maybe he takes Dan Moore's job. Maybe Dan Moore slots in at right guard or something. I don't know, but this feels like a squad that not going to quite make a top 10 offense this year. Not going to be a bad offense, I don't think, but not quite going to be in that upper echelons of the NFL. I think they're going to be good, but not quite that good. As far as the defense is concerned, though, every bit as good as they were last year. They still got Larry Ogunjobi in there at left defensive end. Nose tackle Keanu Benton steps in. Connor Hayward at right defensive end, the future Hall of Famer, still there. And of course, you got T.J. Watt on the outside, Alex Highsmith on the other side. One of the best duos as far as pass rush, really just all around duos on the outside is concerned in the entire league on defense. And in the inside, you got Cole Holcomb and Landon Roberts there in the middle. Really solid front seven. They have a really solid front seven every single year, do the Pittsburgh Steelers. And that front seven is going to be the strength, the straw that stirs this drink, if you will. They're going to need pass rush there up the middle and on the outside. If they can create that pass rush, they can have a really, really good unit there. On the back end, Patrick Peterson is your either first or second corner. Joey Porter Jr. steps right in on the other side. And Levi Wallace, Madre Harper, that's your depth right now, and that would scare me. That would scare me if I was a fan of the Pittsburgh Steelers right now. That's your big question. I mean, DeMonte Casey, not the greatest safety in the world, but you still got Minkah Fitzpatrick back there at free safety roaming back there to cover up some mistakes. The secondary is a big question mark for me for the Pittsburgh Steelers, but the front seven is good enough to where I still think they're going to be pushing top 10. I feel like offense and defense kind of feels similar to me, except for I think the defense might even be a little bit stronger. They might be just sneaking into that top 10 when it's all said and done. This is just it's a solid group on the front seven. It's a questionable group on the back end. If there's one thing that keeps them out of the top 10, it will be that back end. Not sure about Patrick Peterson at this point in his career. Not sure about the depth behind Patrick Peterson and Joey Porter. Not sure about DeMonte Casey as a safety opposite of Minkah Fitzpatrick. Minkah Fitzpatrick is the only one that I truly trust inherently this year to play well. Outside of that, I got no clue what the back end is going to hold. They're going to need T.J. Watt to stay healthy. They're going to need Cam Hayward to rush the passer. They're going to need Alex Highsmith to rush the passer. They're going to need a vaunted pass rush if they want to kind of get into that top 10, if you will. I don't think without a pass rush they can really get there because the back end is just simply not good enough to hold up for a long period of time. They're going to need a good pass rush this year if they want to get some stuff going. And with that, I would say the floor for this Steelers team, 8 wins, 8-9. This could be the year where Mike Tomlin finally has a losing season. Do I think it's going to happen? No, but that offensive line is far from any place that would be called a finished product. Not necessarily where you want it to be right now. I think they'll play better than they did last year. I think they made some additions to make it better than last year, but they still could very easily kind of fall apart and not be very good. That secondary, if they don't get good pass rush on a consistent basis, could be leaky at times. They could give up some big plays in the back end if they're not careful. This could very easily be an 8-9 season where they're just kind of average once again, and then the idiots are going to start calling for Mike Tomlin's job. It shouldn't happen. Hopefully it won't happen. If anyone gets the axe this season, it will probably be the offensive coordinator, Matt Canada, because he really has never had a great offense there, except for like maybe 1 year with Ben Roethlisberger, and even then, not the greatest offense in the world when it was all said and done. So I don't know. That's really what I'm thinking as far as the floor. As far as the ceiling is concerned, I think 11 wins. I just don't think they got that. They don't have that same sort of upper range as I would say the Bengals or the Ravens have when it's all said and done. And look, if one team's going 11-6 and the other team's going 12-5, some teams have got to take the brunt of that somewhere, and I just feel like the Steelers might end up taking it, even on the upper end, 11 wins, 11-6. That's if all goes completely right. If the offensive line looks fantastic, if the defense, if the secondary looks better than I expected, if they got a very good pass rush and they're really getting into that top 10 on defense, that's what I'm thinking there. If they go 11-6, I don't think that's going to be the case though. My guess, probably either 9-8 or 10-7. I feel like that's kind of where they're at right now. Still probably pushing for a playoff spot when it's all said and done, especially with in this world where we got 3 wild card spots. I do feel like they're still a pretty solid team. Once again, I don't think Mike Tomlin is going to let them he's not going to physically let them have a losing record this year. He's going to be pushing for a playoff spot no matter what, pretty much. I think 10-7 is probably the number. I think they're a little bit better than they were last year. Still probably a year away from really making some noise, though. Probably need to really go hard on that offensive line this next offseason and see what we can do with the offense as far as Matt Canada is concerned. If it goes well this year, no harm, no foul. If it doesn't go well, you know what you need to do. It's probably been a year overdue at this point in the eyes of some fans. So 10-7 is probably what I'm thinking for the Pittsburgh Steelers. And last team on this list, a team just, led by a scumbag, absolute garbage person. We got the Cleveland Browns there. Don't even know where I'm going with that. They're basically the same team that they were last year. Fantastic offensive line, maybe the best running back in the entire game with Nick Chubb, a nasty man at quarterback, and Deshaun Watson. Picked up some good receivers though in the offseason. They traded for Elijah Moore, I believe. They got Amari Cooper in the building last year. I want to say they drafted Cedric Tillman as well, is apparently looking really, really good in camp. That's really just take that with a grain of salt. It's according to one of those stupid accounts like Rookie Watch or JPA Football or something like that. So take that for what it is. It probably absolutely nothing because those people are probably not connected at all to anybody. But I digress on that front. It's a team that if you look at the roster, though, I mean, they got stars at basically every level on the defense. You got a really solid group of weapons on the offensive side of the ball. Underrated tight end in David Njoku. Quarterback that should be good in Deshaun Watson. I think he'll probably be better than last year. If there is a God, he'll never be good at quarterback again, but we'll have to see how that all works out. I think, logically thinking, he'll probably be better than what he was at the end of last year, which was just abjectly terrible. But I don't know. In this division, they have a tough hill to climb. And of course, they have a roster that says probably should be making the playoffs. And if they were in one of those South divisions, you just plop them right in there. They're probably good enough to make a playoff run, I would say. But in this division, with how absolutely jam-packed it is, you just don't know what you're going to get. Also, by the way, they got, who is it back? Jim Schwartz is back in the building, back in the NFL at that defensive coordinator position. Chaos defense is back, baby. I cannot wait to watch what he does there with the Cleveland Browns. That should be fun on the defensive side of the ball. We'll just have to see what Kevin Stefanski can put together on the offensive side of the ball. Obviously, having Nick Chubb there in that offensive line makes things a whole lot easier. Just hopefully, from their perspective, hopefully Deshaun Watson is better for them, so they can make a little bit more waves than they did throughout the course of last season, with him being suspended 10 games for being a nasty person. Outside of that, though, let's look at their personnel moves this offseason. Starting off with the draft like we have with everybody else. Obviously, didn't have a first or second round pick because they spent it on a nasty man to come in and play their quarterback. So we won't have to talk about that anymore. Third round, first pick of the draft, they get Cedric Tillman, wide receiver out of Tennessee, who has apparently been playing well in camp. They're going to need him to step up and play well this season if they're going to have a real complete group of receivers over there. But apparently he's doing well, so let's look at that and hope, I suppose. Third round as well, they get Siaki Ika, defensive tackle out of Baylor. Never heard of him before in my entire life, but I wish well all to that man. That was words, that was a sentence, I suppose, but we'll just keep it moving from there. Fourth round, they get DeJuan Jones out of Ohio State. Interesting one. There was talk that he could maybe be a first round pick, slipped all the way to the fourth round. Massive giant of a human being. He'll be there as depth if they need him to be. Can learn the ropes behind some really good players there at tackle with the Cleveland Browns. I like that in the fourth round though for him. That should be a nice little project. Also in the fourth round, they get Missouri defensive end Isaiah McGuire. He'll probably be a rotational guy in there somewhere if he can get on the field. Fifth round, they get Dorian Thompson-Robinson, QB out of UCLA, a guy I really, really like coming out. I mean, there were some size questions. He's rail thin back there. That's the main thing, and you're not going to be expecting him to start over Deshaun Watson. But in the few reps he's had this preseason, he might just run Kellen Mond out of the league. I can tell you right now, Kellen Mond ain't the second string quarterback. I will tell you that right this second. Dorian Thompson-Robinson's going to take the stranglehold of that backup quarterback spot right now. And if you take Deshaun Watson out of the equation, I think Dorian Thompson-Robinson might be the actual He might be the actual starter, but also if you took Deshaun Watson out of this equation, the Browns would be uh, not be picked to be going to the playoffs. I'll tell you that right now. So it might just end up being a moot point. I like Dorian Thompson-Robinson though. I hope he gets an opportunity at some point because he has been electric so far in the preseason. He was electric in college. Got a lot of playing time in college. Really, really experienced quarterback. I like that pick for him in the 5th round. And outside of that, it's a bunch of guys you just ain't never heard of. One guy from Northwestern, so I guess he got free from Pat Fitzgerald. Easy for me to say. Away from that toxic work environment, I suppose. We don't have to talk about that right now, though. Let's talk about the free agency, shall we? As far as the interior goes, oh yes, Dalvin Tomlinson. That was the defensive tackle from Minnesota that we lost this season, whose name was escaping me. So he goes to the Cleveland Browns on a 4-year deal for like $64 million. It's something that the Vikings simply could not pony up to. Good for Dalvin Tomlinson getting all that money. I'm going to miss him. He was basically one of the only bright spots for the Minnesota defense last year. They bring in Juan Thornhill, safety from the Kansas City Chiefs on a 3-year deal. Obo Okoronkwo, he comes over from the Houston Texans. He'll be slotting in at defensive end. Jacoby Brissett, they lose in free agency to the Washington Commanders. Savvy move to pick him up by the Washington Commanders. Nice backup plan for Sam Howell. Just doesn't work out the way they expect him to. They got like an eyelash or something. Oh, my tongue somehow. Yep, that's an eyelash, and I'm not sure exactly how that got there, but it was there, man. I don't know how the hell that even happened, but we're just going to keep it moving. Got Hjalte Froholt there. Great name. Going from Cleveland to Arizona, the center. I assume backup center because they're just absolutely loaded on that offensive line. Tight end Jordan Akins comes over from Houston as well. Defensive tackle Taven Bryan they lose. He goes to the Indianapolis Colts. Sione Takitaki, he stays with Cleveland Browns on a 1-year deal. Chase Winovich, he goes over to the Houston Texans. Marquise Goodwin, wide receiver, speedster, former Olympian, coming over from the Seattle Seahawks. He signs with the Cleveland Browns on a 1-year deal. Cornerback Michael Ford comes over from Atlanta on a 1-year deal. Greedy Williams goes over to the Philadelphia Eagles on a 1-year deal. Rodney McLeod comes over from the Indianapolis Colts on a 1-year deal. And after that, Dearness Johnston, they lost in free agency. He goes over to the Jacksonville Jaguars. He'll be a depth guy over there. Wish he was getting some playing time, but I think he's going to be absolutely buried there behind, obviously, Travis Etienne and Tank Bigsby, who they just drafted over there with the Jacksonville Jaguars. Apparently, there's some stupid debate about which guy is bigger, Tank Bigsby or Travis Etienne. Guys, go outside. Go get some sun. No one fucking cares about the weights of a couple running backs, man. No one, go outside. Stop it. Get some help. No one cares. Go think about something else. You would waste so much less time if you didn't worry about which guy weighed more, Travis Etienne or Tank Bigsby. Y'all are fucking weird. Go focus on something else right now. But that is all to say. We're done there as far as the personnel moves for the Cleveland Brownies. So let's look at the depth chart. Obviously, got the nasty man, Deshaun Watson there at the starting quarterback. With whenever I took this screenshot, Josh Dobbs at the number 2, Kellen Mond at the number 3, with DTR over there at the distant 4. I'm here to tell you right now, DTR is about to take a stranglehold of that second string quarterback. I can almost guarantee you that's what's going to happen there. As far as running backs, Nick Chubb, Jerome Ford, the truck that they got out of Cincinnati there this offseason, and then Demetric Felton as the third guy. Wide receiver, Amari Cooper is still coming back as that number 1 receiver. Elijah Moore, who they traded for from the New York Jets of Piss and Miss fame when he was back in college. One of my favorite, just heartwarming memories of all time. I mean, I'll tell you what, it comes on my timeline every time. I got to give it a like and just, it puts a smile on my face, man. It makes my day every time I see that Piss and Miss. And if you want a good laugh, just go look up the Piss and Miss. It's just classic college football when it was all said and done. But I digress there. Donovan Peoples-Jones, currently the number 3 receiver, and that's how much they improved this season. Donnie Peeps was the number 1 receiver for the Cleveland Browns at times last year. They were some absolute stanky wet cheeks last year, man. They were not very good on the outside. They upgraded big time with Amari Cooper, Elijah Moore in there. Got Cedric Tillman as the distant 3rd, Marquise Goodwin in there as well, and then David Bell as your 5th receiver, I believe. David Njoku as your tight end as well, with Jordan Akins as his backup. A couple of really good receiving tight ends. David Njoku in particular, very underrated as a pass catcher in the league. Somehow it feels like he's just ever consistent out there, but never really gets the credit he deserves. And then that offensive line, it speaks for itself. It's the same guys that have been in there the last several seasons. Jedrick Wills, Joel Bitonio, Ethan Pocic, Wyatt Teller, and Jack Conklin. That's maybe the best offensive line in the entire league, with maybe the best running back in the entire league behind them. You got those two things. Everything else becomes much easier for you. So this has the makings. If Deshaun Watson plays like he did with the Houston Texans before he was, had to sit out because he did all those nasty things allegedly, if Deshaun Watson is that player that he once was, this could very easily be a top 10 unit. I would not be shocked at all. I don't think that's what's going to happen, though. I think they might be like, kind of middle of the pack sort of team. I think they're going to run the ball very well, but I was worried about what I saw at the end of the year with Deshaun. It looked like he just had never played football at times at the end of the year. He was legitimately bad towards the end of the season. I'm going to have to see some things. He got all the pieces in place, it would appear. Great offensive line, great running back, good group of receivers. I am not exactly sold on what Deshaun Watson showed me last year on the football field. Certainly not sold off the field. I'll tell you that much right now. But I probably need to stop talking about that so much. It's fun to rag on a guy for his mistakes, though. I'll tell you that right now. But it's kind of how I'm feeling. I reserve judgment at this point. I think at the very worst, they're going to be kind of a middle of the pack team. So I'll leave them there for now as far as what I'm expecting. On the defensive side of the ball, man, they're looking good. They got Myles Garrett, Dalvin Tomlinson, Jordan Elliott there in the middle as well. Zadarius Smith, who they traded for from the Minnesota Vikings after being a bit of a contract dispute with the team this offseason. Really good rushing tandem there between Myles Garrett and Zadarius Smith. Feels like basically every team in this division outside of the Ravens has like a pair of bookends there to rush the passer and get after him. I love what they got there on the front four. Jeremiah Owusu-Koramoah, absolute freak there. Weak side linebacker Anthony Walker coming back as well. And Sione Takitaki as the strong side linebacker. Really good front seven. Maybe the best front seven in the entire division as far as I'm concerned. And they've got some good ones in this division too, so that's really saying something. And then on the back end, you still got basically the same guys you got last year. You slot in Juan Thornhill as the free safety, but you still got Grant Delpit. You still got Denzel Ward. You still got Greg Newsome, the second out there. Depth is looking interesting. You got my boy Martin Emerson, Hail State, over there at depth behind Denzel Ward. You got A.J. Green the third behind Greg Newsome. And then you got some good depth outside of that as well. Sorry, I just had a big old brain fart. Just stop thinking there for a second. I don't know what this defense is going. I mean, it's the Cleveland Browns, man. It feels like they always find a way to get the absolute worst out of what they've got on the roster outside of that one playoff berth they had with Baker Mayfield. But I don't know. It's got to make when you got a guy like Myles Garrett. You got Jeremiah Owusu-Koramoah. You got Zadarius Smith opposite of Myles Garrett. You got Denzel Ward, a legit kind of star cornerback back there. I do feel like they've got the pieces in place to be a top 10 unit. And I've said that about basically every defense in this division. That's just kind of, it's the AFC North, baby. The reason the kitchen is so hot is because the defenses are so aggressive. That's the hallmark of this AFC North football. So it's no wonder that basically every team is going to be pushing the top 10 when it's all said and done as far as like what their roster says. But I don't know. There have been times where they just have not played well, kind of inexplicably. Had some injuries at times last year. Kind of played really well towards the end of the year, though. I like this unit on the defensive side of the ball. I just don't know. I don't know. It's the Browns, man. That's the best way to describe it. It's the Browns. I don't know how good they're going to be in any given year. They got the pieces in place to do it, but I don't know. Could they be a top 10 unit? Yeah. Could they be middle of the pack? Yeah. Could they be the bottom of the pack? Sure. It's the Browns. I have no idea. But with all that said, I think their floor is probably 7 wins. 7 wins feels like the floor for them. I don't see them being a whole lot worse than that. But if Deshaun Watson comes out and plays like he did last year, if maybe they get an injury or two along the way, maybe the the defense just inexplicably doesn't play well again for whatever reason, they could very easily go 7-10, man. And the loss has got to come somewhere. And I mean, in this division, someone's going to have to lose out. Someone's going to have to finish last place when it's all said and done. And of the teams I've just mentioned thus far, I mean, it's probably either going to be the Steelers or the Browns there at the last. Like I said, someone's got to finish last in this division. It's just an absolutely freakishly stacked division. And I said it in the intro to this team. If the Browns were in one of the Southern divisions, they'd be right there competing for a division title. But here in the AFC North, I just don't see it happening, man. They're 7 wins is the floor. I'd say probably 10 or 11 wins is their ceiling. I just don't see. I don't see how they get through this division and come out on top when it's all said and done. I just feel like the competition is too good. I think they have a good team, but man, this division is just so absolutely loaded. I think when it's all said and done, I think they're going to be right there with the Steelers when it's all said and done. 10-7. I don't see either 9-8 or 10-7. I don't see how they can make their way up to the very top of this division. But I still think they could be pushing for a playoff spot when it's all said and done. I mean, every single team in this division is so they're well coached for the most part. They have good rosters. They have good defenses, good offenses. I mean, just top to bottom, the AFC North is so good. You're going to probably lose some games in there somewhere. Everyone's going to lose a game here and there that they probably shouldn't have, but that's just how it works in the AFC North, man. It's just so cutthroat, so close, nipping at each other's heels week after week. That's just how the division plays out. And when it's all said and done, Browns probably sitting there at either 10-7, 9-8, probably on the outside looking in as far as the division is concerned. Probably right there on the cusp when it comes to wild cards. Man, I don't know if they're going to be a losing team in this division. They could all be really that good. If there is a losing team in this division, though, probably going to be the Cleveland Browns. For my money, I think the Ravens are going to win this division. I think the Bengals are probably going to finish second, and then third or last is going to be some combination of the Steelers and Browns. You two figure out who's going to be third, who's going to be fourth. That's just kind of how I'm feeling about the AFC North, though. With that, we are done, ladies and gentlemen. Thank you so much for tuning in. This has been Unqualified Analysis. If you enjoyed, subscribe. Tell your friends about it. Rate 5 stars. Help me grow this thing a little bit. Subscribe on the YouTube too while you're at it. Just go on over there, hit the subscribe button, and go forget about it. I suppose. Go enjoy the rest of your day. It ain't gonna take more than a couple minutes. There, link will probably be in the description for all those things. Also, social media, not Twitter. It's X now. Go follow me on X, that stupid thing that Elon Musk renamed, but it's the only real social media I have and keep up with on a regular basis. So go follow me there. It's at twitter.com/Caleb Verzak, though, so not changing that. They're still going to redirect Twitter over to X.com, I would imagine. So you could just go down that little rabbit hole there. Go follow me. And if you want to contact the show, probably want to go ahead and shoot me a DM on Twitter. That's probably the quickest way to get to me. If you don't want to do that, though, I got an email as well, unqualifiedanalysis@gmail.com. Both of those are going to be in the description, linked down there if you want to go out and just explore the space, if you will. Go take a look at what I have to offer as far as communications are concerned. Really weird way to say that. I don't know why I was saying that, but thanks for tuning in to Unqualified Analysis. As always, I got just about no clue what I am talking about, but one thing I learned this week, legitimately learned this week, all of the American flags planted on the moon by the Apollo missions are now bleached white because of radiation from the sun. I'm an idiot, so I thought they were just kind of sitting up there, red, white, and blue to this day. Nope, radiation is a thing, and there's no atmosphere on the moon, so those things are just absolutely white as a sheet up there now. But there you go, the more you know. Have a good day, ladies and gentlemen.